This episode of Spector Creative is brought to you by A Boot to the Head. Looking to tell someone to get away from you quickly? Choose A Boot to the Head. As adult collectors, we have very specific needs. We have needs in terms of scale, in terms of deco, in terms of being able to preserve our figures, and more, toy companies are starting to work with adult collectors. Not only are smaller companies and larger companies coming out with toy lines specifically geared towards adult collectors, essentially, if you don't find it at retail or it's online or at a convention, like some of these special items that show up as convention exclusives, well, that's pretty much how you know if it's for the adult collector, not dependent on retail sales, which pretty much need kids. And at conventions, toy companies, big and small, have over the years gotten better and better and better at holding events and doing presentations for the adult collector to engage and to show off the latest product, sneak peeks of what's coming. And sometimes, if we're really lucky, they also do live panels where we can actually interact with the brand managers, celebrities, toy makers, licensors, sometimes even people from the content. So not only do you get a chance to question them and hear directly from them, but you'll get live sneak peeks at what's coming out in the future and a great way to engage. Even with the pandemic, toy companies have found ways to go online and do this virtually, recreating the kind of convention fan panel experience for your living room. Another thing we see happen all the time is Q&As and toy companies letting fans ask questions with the idea that the company will give you an answer, in a couple weeks once they've had a chance to reply. One of the things with Q&As in particular is they tend to come back a lot of times as sort of magic 8-ball answers, kind of like canned answers, like you may rely on it, or all signs point to yes, or ask again later, or logistics. Yes, I know I'm guilty of this too. We could definitely play a drinking game with the number of canned answers I gave when I was running Q&As at companies like Mattel and Jax, where I would say things like keep reading the bios over and over and over again because honestly I couldn't give away information about upcoming bios. But regardless, there are actually two main reasons why answers that we get back from toy companies in Q&As online sound very canned and very corporate and repetitious. And it's not because we like playing drinking games, but the first reason is approval process. So having any official communication from a company that's going to go out to the public takes a huge amount of approval process. It's not just one person sitting at their desk. Usually it starts with the brand manager, but then it has to get passed to legal, it has to get passed to management, sometimes even upper management. You'd almost be surprised, but when a statement is going out, it has to go through a lot of different channels and check off the boxes as it goes and get input from everyone as it goes. And if it's dealing with a licensed brand from a studio, an IP, well, it probably has to go to the licensor as well to get approval. And these things take time. You can't just, rush it to right to the front of someone's desk. So with all of these approvals and all of these sort of cooks in the kitchen, well, it's a lot of work. It's, like pushing a giant boulder up a hill like this guy's doing here. And that can become difficult in the sense that is it worth it? Is it worth, here we go, is the squeeze worth the juice? Everyone take a drink. Yeah, I mean, obviously, toy companies and corporations want to grow their fan base, and that in turn is going to lead to growing sales. But certain techniques are worth the amount of effort that goes into it. And a lot of it comes down to how big the brands are. Something, and I've mentioned this in many videos with how small the adult collector market is versus other toy lines like toddler, dolls, cars, vehicles, games, and puzzles. Well, there's also another reason. It's not just the size of the market and the amount of work that goes into doing a Q&A. It's also not internal politics. It's more kind of, well, what it really used to be was the shaming. And I know you're like, wait, what? Why would someone shame you for interacting with fans and doing a Q&A? It seems like a great idea. And some of it comes down to the fact that it's not personal, it's business. And I wasn't really actually sure how to approach this. But then when I picked up the Toys of Masters of the Universe coffee table book that came out recently and started reading all the Q&As that were in there, I saw Jeremy Padower, who is absolutely a good colleague of mine, and I know him very well, respect him a ton. And he actually did a really good job of expressing this. I wasn't sure how to express it, but he sort of was very clear where he talked about how when you engage with fans, you were basically kind of considered a nerd by your colleagues, and that pretty much hits the nail on the head. Is especially 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when you know 2000X and JLU were wrapping up and I was coming into the brand, the MBAs, the people that are running the brand from a marketing standpoint, were kind of like the cool kids. They were the ones on top of the bleachers. That opening scene from Freaks and Geeks, versus those of us who actually might collect the toys we were working on. Well, we tended to be viewed much more as nerds. So it wasn't that doing Q&A and interactions with fans was looked at as, oh, you're really thinking outside the box and coming up with creative ways to reach out to the fans. It was much more like you're wasting your time. You're bringing yourself down to a nerd level. You're not going above and beyond. You're a dork. And it was kind of like swimming upstream. It was going, against the flow of corporate culture. And I'm not bashing MBAs at all. I mean, I'm getting my MBA right now. But like being a fan of the product you're working on was seen as very much counterculture. And yeah, I mean, people would talk about you behind your back like it was, high school. It was like, oh my God, that guy over there, he actually collects action figures. And this could lead to loss of opportunity. It could lead to, honestly, loss of promotion and loss of the ability to move up the corporate ladder because you were looked at as, not just someone cranking out, following the corporate line and making product, but you were actually collecting the product and reading comic books, and you were going to Comic-Con on your own. Like, you would do that? You would use your vacation for that? Obviously, things have changed, and a big reason for that over the years is that what I guess one could call nerd culture has really become mainstream. And a lot of that is because there's been entertainment over the last 15, 20 years that has really changed this. I remember when I was in junior high, if I wore an Iron Man t-shirt, people probably they did. They would look at me weird, and wasn't exactly that popular with the girls. And nowadays, not only is everyone wearing this, but, movie stars are going to Comic-Con and waving, their quote unquote freak flag high. And it's become mainstream and popular, and it's cool to be into comic books now. Well, yep, 20 years ago, it really wasn't like that. And while there's been an increase in acceptance for this type of behavior, doing things like Q&As with fans and doing interviews or podcasts or whatever it was, back then, was definitely looked down on. And it was also a huge amount of work. It was a huge, weight to lift. So when Q&As sound robotic, and they even sound robotic today, it's because of a lot of this. It's the approval process, it's the culture, and it's also the lawyers. Because not only is there an approval process, but anything a giant corporation puts down in words that are online, it's basically like, creating something permanent. And the lawyers' jobs are to protect the company and protect the IP owners, the licensor partners like movie studios. So they much, much prefer for brand managers to talk less. They really would rather be like, is it really worth you talking? Because if you put something in words, it's forever. And that could come back to haunt us because you never know. I mean, lawsuits and angry fans, and it's just, is it worth the risk? Is it worth it to be haunted by your words forever and ever just to get some fan relations? So it tends to take brand managers that are willing to do all of this and face this like huge firing squad of approvals, you know, culture and peers, and legal, just for the small amount that this adds up to within the larger picture. So that's why Q&As are not always, in friendly talk and can sound a little corporate. I hope this video had some insight, and if you like it, do share it, because that tells YouTube to share it with other people. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.